Hi, my name's Neil Saunders and welcome to this week's edition of Retail Perspectives. We're getting a lot nearer Christmas now, so this week I want to take a look at some of the strategies that retailers are employing to do well over this festive season. The first thing that I would turn my attention to is advertising, because all retailers now have their advertising campaigns fully in place, and there are some interesting trends and dynamics coming through. Obviously, one of the most iconic adverts and one of the ones that we awaited with bated breath for was the John Lewis advert, which always sets the tone for the season. The interesting thing about John Lewis's advertising is that it actually contains very little, if any, product. It's generally about emotion, and it sends a big halo around the brand in terms of trying to portray the values that John Lewis stands for. Interestingly though, I think a lot of other retailers have tapped into this sort of trend, and although many have products, or certainly more products in their advertising, there is still this real view of trying to create an emotional pull as to why you should buy something, or the sense of meaning about a retailer. And I think this is a shift from where we were last year, and it's actually quite a deliberate shift. And one of the reasons I think it's deliberate is because, if truth be told, we are quite reluctant still about buying things. If you look at the gift data, for example, about what people are planning to buy, there's still a lot of people who are planning to give things like cash or vouchers because they know that they would be useful gifts. Now, of course, that's not always necessarily helpful for retailers that want to sell product. So what they try to do is put some emotion around the product or the idea or the brand values they've got to try and capture consumers and get them excited about the spirit of Christmas and the spirit of gift giving. And actually they try to give the sense that the gifts are useful. So it's often about the service that's involved in trying to help people choose the right present. And that comes through in the advertising, and it also comes through in things like point of sale material in store. So there's a lot more focus on the emotional reasons for buying, getting the right gift, getting the right thing in terms of what people want, so that you've made a useful expenditure rather than just buying something that's perhaps put to one side and is wasted. So that's certainly one of the themes that we're seeing come through this Christmas. Another interesting theme that we're seeing is about click and collect. Now, we have a lot of talk about Cyber Monday and the big day when people do all of their online shopping. And of course, that still holds true. But one of the things that we're seeing is, because of click and collect, the ability of people to go online, order their products and collect them very quickly from a store, is that actually people are pushing online shopping a lot later. So most people in years gone by, the past 5 years or so, would have kind of done their internet shopping around early to mid-December at the very latest, because they want to leave enough time between the ordering period and the delivery period to make sure they get the products in time for Christmas. Now, of course, with click and collect, that delivery window is a lot shorter. You can leave the purchasing until later. So we're seeing a shift in internet shopping that is pushing it later into December in terms of when people do the bulk of the transactions online. Now, interestingly, that makes a lot of retailers nervous, because they look at the data and compare it to the previous year and think, ooh, Christmas has got off to a slower start. Maybe it's something to do with us or our offer. And the tendency then is to try and discount or do some promotional activity to drive sales forward. Actually, it's probably important for retailers to try and hold their nerve, because it's a natural function that most purchasing has been pulled back later, rather than a dynamic of any individual retailer. It's something that's affecting the sector as a whole. So that's another interesting dynamic that we're seeing this Christmas. I think the third interesting dynamic is the willingness to trade up. We've seen this across the board in many different sectors. There's a much greater willingness to buy special and premium foods, and actually most of the grocers are putting their best foot forward in those areas. But it's not just food, it applies to a lot of other sectors as well. And one of the reasons for that comes back to the sense of actually wanting to buy something useful. And what we're seeing in terms of gifting is actually a lot of people are buying fewer gifts, but they're spending more on the individual gift that they do buy. So they're trying to buy the right thing, and that often means buying something of higher value that will be valued and will be liked, rather than buying lots of little things that perhaps aren't quite so useful to the recipient. So that's another interesting trend we're seeing this Christmas. So I think there are a lot of dynamics that are changing because of technology and how that has evolved on the online side, because consumer mindsets have evolved and the economic views of consumers are changing as we start to come out of the period of downturn. And actually it's making it quite an interesting Christmas, but the good news is it's making it quite a robust Christmas as well. This will be one of the best Christmases that we've had since we entered the downturn in 2008 in terms of the growth retailers can expect. However, because the sands are shifting and the way in which consumers behave is changing, retailers still have to put their best foot forward and still have to think very strategically about how they're going to capture their own share of those sales.